Um, so basically, what the training here in the parking garage is about, it's going to be about the X-Point wireless system, and what it is in the parking garage here. Now, the fact that it's a parking garage is pretty simple. So each one of these fixtures, it's hard to tell with the bright light, but if you look on each one of these fixtures, there's an occupancy sensor on the side of it. Again, like the light's kind of bright, so it's hard to tell.
I know, you totally can't. Well, I didn't actually. If you look down there.
Yeah, maybe down there, yeah. You can see the aux sensor sticking off the side of each light.
Right.
So what each one of those occupancy sensors is, it's a daylighting, aux sensing, and relay all combined into one. And then a radio, and they talk to one another.
Uh-huh.
So the way these are designed, or programmed based on the design, is that I think it's 4 or 5 fixtures are in a group, and that acts as an occupancy group. So when someone drives through it, those lights will come up to full.
It's like the refrigerators at the market now.
Yeah, when you walk, yes, exactly. So when you walk by, you can see your favorite produce. So here you can see your favorite parking spot. So as you drive through the lights, so it's not going to be one light come on. It's going to be a bank of 4 or 5 lights coming on.
I see. What about nighttime?
At night, well, right now it goes down to 20%. So if it's unoccupied, the lights will go down to 20%. And the timeout on that is 10 minutes. So once it goes unoccupied, it's a 10-minute timeout to go from 100 to 20%. And all of these fixtures are on an emergency circuit. So if the power does cut off and the emergency kicks in, it will deactivate the aux sensing for 90 minutes. So everything will come up to full for 90 minutes. And then after that, everything will revert back to its normal operating mode. So, and that'll also happen.
If one of the sensors goes out, will that whole...
No, what will happen is if one sensor, because every fixture has a sensor on it in that little group, so if one sensor in that group goes out, the other sensors will still bring those lights, will still operate those lights in that group. So what the type of system that it's using is called, it's called a wireless mesh. So it's a mesh system. So what it is that each fixture talks to each other fixture, and that's how it routes its information. So if one aux sensor goes bad, like you're talking about, and that aux sensor is being used to route information, it will reroute to a different aux sensor so that information can still get passed through the whole system. So it's pretty robust that way.
How do you know if the sensors do go out?
Most of the time, if the sensors do go out, if you're looking straight up at a sensor, there's a green LED light that flashes at it when you walk past it and stuff. If you don't see that LED flashing, that's a pretty good sign that the sensor's bad. If by some chance every sensor in your occupancy group went bad, then those lights wouldn't go unoccupied or occupied. But
Will they go to 20%? Or?
they would stay at whatever their last state was. So if they were, and then you could hit the override switch here and you could bring them up to whatever level. And then they would stay at that level since there would be any occupied. But the odds of that happening are,
No, I know.
I don't know.
It's safety.
Yeah, but safety, yeah. But these lights don't have relays in them because they're all emergency. So it's impossible unless you have a complete power failure and your backup system doesn't work for the lights to go completely out. So they will always be on at some level. So here's a floor plan of the garage. And you can see, it's hard to tell, but there's different zones, or zone 8, so these are zones, are how the aux sensing is set up. So like if anyone, so I don't know if you can see them kind of glowing when I run the cursor over it. So all those lights act as one. So any one of those aux sensors will activate that group of lights. And then as you went through the garage, if that's that sensor would activate that. So as you're going through the garage, it's not like when you have those garages where it's one sensor per fixture. It's a lot of times if you're driving through, by the time the light comes on, it's behind you. So this will actually turn lights on in front of you, so you can, it's not that you can't see where you're going, but it'll help you see where you're going. And it's more for walking, really.
Does that go for walking too?
Yeah, yes. So if you're walking and you hit that sensor, it'll turn on the lights in front of you, which is really nice for walking, because people want to see where they're going. So these switches that are behind you, let me see, I think my power, hopefully, it's based on these zones. So you can, there's a max and a min, so you can, because there's not an off. So if you hit the switch, it's the first floor, then south and north is the way they're labeled. So, so two of those zones are combined on one switch. So one side, if you hit one switch here, two of those zones will come up to full, or if you hit the minimum, they'll dim down to min. And these bottom, so that's, you still got the plastic covering on it, but that's how they're labeled. See, so south and north. The bottom two switches on each of these are just spares. Right now, they're not used for anything. And then floor 5, since it's only really half floor because the other part is the roof, we're only using, we're using, that didn't get labeled, but basically it's the same thing on this switch. And then you have an override, and they're labeled here. Let's say 20, 40, it's 101%. So
I haven't been up to the top. You guys have like poles up there with lights on them or not?
there's poles up there. They're not controlled through this system. I think they probably have just photosensors on them.
They do, yeah. Just
So,
photo cells, yeah.
just photo cells. So, so they're not. So they're completely separate from the system.
Thus the door.
So, and all this right here basically is because these switches are not wireless, so they're Cat5 into this box, and this box has a little device. It's a lot of complicated. This device talks to this device that sends a signal down to this device, which sends out the wireless signal from the switches. So
Now, if any of this fails, will the lights go out or no?
there's no. If any of this fails, the only thing that will happen is your switches won't work.
The ones that fail.
Yeah, and again, these lights can't go off unless you have complete power failure and no backup. Because I think that's a UPS, right? So it's battery backup.
Generator.
It's a generator. So yeah, so the generator. So as long as your generator's running, the lights are on.
Yep.
So
There'll be a slight blip when the generator is between the utility and generator.
yeah, they might go off for because they told me how long it was. I mean,
That's what that device is doing.
it's a half a second or even that. I don't even know if it's that long.
Yeah.
It's a yeah.
And you transfer switch back to the generator.
Yeah, so I mean, by the time it happens, by the time you notice, it'll already be done. And then this is just the Cat5 cable. This is how this stuff. So if you ever come in here and you see some of this stuff unplugged or something, that's not supposed to be. So you can just plug it back in. But that and then the ADR. This is if you are on the power. Who's your power? I have PG up around that, but just who's your power? Edison, Burbank. Oh, you have it. So if they were doing the automatic demand response and you were a part of that system, what it does is that when the power, when there's a request for a power, shut down or
fully
degray,
blacked out, right.
yeah, that if you're on their system, then they could turn your lights down automatically. It's now required that you have the ability to do that. It's not required that you do it, but it's required that you have the ability to do that. So that's what this is. And then that's basically these switches here, they're set up to the same levels that you would get. That's why I set these levels at the 40% and the 20% so that if anybody ever wanted to see what this would do without actually activating this, you could just hit these switches and stuff. This is what the lights would do.